They poured alcohol on a waitress for fun, unaware she was the most feared Mafia boss's fiancée. "You know who I am now, don't you?" Dominic Leone's voice cut through the silence that had fallen over the crimson room, his eyes never leaving the face of the man who had poured whiskey over Adriana minutes earlier. Alessandro's complexion had turned ashen, his earlier bravado evaporating like morning mist. "Mr. Leone, we were just having some fun. We didn't know she was." "That she was what?" Dominic interrupted, his tone deceptively gentle. "That she was someone who mattered? That she belonged to someone powerful?" He leaned closer, close enough that only Alessandro could hear his next words. "Or that humiliating her would be the last mistake you'd ever make in the city? Have you ever witnessed someone being cruel to a stranger, only to discover they've made a catastrophic misjudgment? Have you felt that moment of vindication when the tables turn, when the powerless suddenly reveal their hidden strength? If you've ever worked in service, or been treated as invisible by those who think money equals worth, this story will resonate deep in your soul. I'm Lucy, and today I'm sharing the story of Adriana Vega, a waitress whose quiet dignity in the face of humiliation revealed more strength than the men who thought pouring alcohol on her was entertainment could ever understand. If you believe everyone deserves respect regardless of their job title, hit that like button right now. The first splash hit her back like ice, soaking through her white uniform shirt in an instant. The second caught her hair, alcohol dripping down her neck as laughter erupted behind her. "Oops, sorry sweetheart." Hand slipped, drawled a voice thick with expensive liquor and entitlement. Adriana Vega didn't turn around. She kept her eyes fixed on the tray of empty glasses she'd been collecting, her fingers gripping the metal edge so tightly her knuckles blanched white. Around her, the crimson room continued its Friday night symphony of clinking glasses and mindless chatter, the upscale clientele of Milan's financial district unwinding after another week of making millions. Only a few patrons noticed the incident, a table of 5 men in tailored suits drenching a waitress with their overpriced whiskey. Fewer still registered the absolute stillness that came over her slender frame, the way her breathing slowed rather than quickened, how her eyes didn't fill with tears but instead grew cold and distant. "Hey, I think we hurt her feelings," another man stage whispered, triggering another round of laughter. "Maybe we should help dry her off." A hand reached for her waist, but Adriana stepped smoothly aside, finally turning to face them. 5 men, all in their 30s, wearing watches that cost more than she'd make in a year at this job. The leader, the one who'd poured his drink on her, had a sharp face with cold blue eyes, his smile revealing perfect teeth that had never known a day of real hunger or fear. "Is there something else you need, gentlemen?" she asked, her voice soft but steady, her Italian carrying just a hint of her native Romanian accent. The blue-eyed man leaned back, amused by her composure. "Actually, yes. Another round. And maybe a smile this time? You've been so serious all night." His companions snickered, emboldened by his cruelty. One of them, a heavy-set man with a gold signet ring, added, "And maybe change your shirt. You seem to have had an accident." More laughter. Adriana nodded once. "Of course. I'll be right back with your drinks." As she walked away, she heard one of them say, "These Eastern European girls, so desperate for work they'll take anything. No self-respect." The words stung more than the alcohol soaking through her clothes. Not because they were true, but because they revealed how little these men understood about dignity, about survival, about what true strength looked like. In the service corridor leading to the kitchen, Adriana passed Marco, the floor manager, who noticed her soaked uniform with alarm. "Adriana, what happened? Did someone—" "Table 12, she said simply. "They spilled their drinks." Marco's face darkened. "Those finance guys? I'll have them removed immediately." "No." Her response was immediate, her hand catching his arm with surprising strength. "Don't do anything. But they can't treat staff like. Please, Marco. Her eyes met his, and something in her gaze made him step back slightly. Just let me change and serve them their next round. It's fine. Marco hesitated, confusion evident on his face. In the 3 years Adriana had worked at the Crimson Room, she had never tolerated disrespect from patrons. She was always professional but firm, commanding a quiet respect that even the wealthiest clients usually recognized. This passive acceptance was entirely out of character. "Are you sure?" he asked, studying her face. "I'm sure," she replied, already moving toward the staff room. Some lessons are best taught without words. In the small employee bathroom, Adriana changed quickly, wiping the alcohol from her skin with damp paper towels. As she buttoned the fresh shirt, her fingers brushed against the delicate gold chain around her neck, following it to the small pendant hidden beneath her collar, a stylized lion with ruby eyes, identical to the one tattooed on the chest of the man she was to marry in 3 weeks. Dominic Leone. The name that was whispered rather than spoken in Milan's underworld. The man whose protection made certain neighborhoods safer than any police presence could. The man whose retribution was swift, creative, and absolute. The man who had looked at her, a waitress with nothing to her name but determination and quiet dignity, and decided she was worth burning the world for. Adriana hadn't been born into privilege. Her earliest memories were of post-communist Romania, of her parents working multiple jobs to keep food on the table, of wearing hand-me-downs and studying by candlelight during frequent power outages. But what her family lacked in resources, they made up for in pride and determination. "Never let anyone make you feel small," her father had told her repeatedly. "Your worth isn't determined by what you have, but by who you are." Those words had sustained her through the hardest times, when she'd left home at 18 with a scholarship to the University of Milan and barely enough money for the first month's rent. When the scholarship had been reduced in her second year, forcing her to find night work to continue her education. When professors and classmates had dismissed her because of her accent, her second-hand clothes, her obvious lack of connections in a society that valued them above all else. She had taken the job at the Crimson Room because it paid better than most service positions, allowing her to send a little money home each month while continuing her studies in international business. The work was demanding but straightforward, and the upscale clientele usually maintained at least a veneer of civility. Usually. When she returned to the bar to collect the drinks for table 12, the bartender, Sophia, gave her a sympathetic look. "I heard what those pigs did," she muttered, lining up 5 whiskeys on Adriana's tray. "Want me to accidentally drop some bitters in their drinks? Or something stronger?" Adriana's lips curved in the ghost of a smile. "No need. Just make them exactly as ordered." Sophia raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She'd worked at the Crimson Room long enough to know when someone had plans of their own. "Your fiancé is coming tonight, isn't he?" she asked instead, glancing at the elegant watch on Adriana's wrist, a gift that had raised eyebrows among the staff when she first wore it. "Yes." After his meeting across town. Adriana checked the time. "He should be here within the hour." Sophia's eyes widened slightly. "And these guys chose tonight to mess with you? Talk about bad timing." "Or perfect timing," Adriana replied, lifting the tray with practiced ease. "Depending on your perspective." As Adriana approached table 12 again, she noticed the men had grown louder, drawing irritated glances from nearby patrons. The blue-eyed leader was gesturing expansively, his voice carrying across the room. "And then I told him either sign the deal today or watch your company dissolve by Monday. You should have seen his face." He mimicked an expression of shock and despair, to the delight of his companions. Alessandro Visconti. Adriana had caught his name from their conversation earlier. Rising star at one of Milan's most prestigious financial firms. Known for aggressive tactics and spectacular results. The kind of man who saw the world as divided into winners and losers, predators and prey. The kind of man who had never faced real consequences for his actions. Adriana set their drinks down carefully, one by one. None of them acknowledged her presence until she placed the last glass before Alessandro. "Ah, our favorite waitress returns," he said, looking up at her with that same entitled smile. "Dry now, are we?" "Yes, sir," she replied evenly. "Will there be anything else?" He studied her for a moment, perhaps disappointed by her lack of visible distress. "Actually, yes. Your number 4 when we're done here." His friends exchanged glances, smirking. "I'm engaged," Adriana said simply, showing the modest diamond ring on her left hand. Alessandro laughed. "And? I'm married. Doesn't mean we can't have some fun." He reached for her hand, but she withdrew it smoothly. "My fiancé wouldn't approve." Something in her tone must have finally registered, because Alessandro's smile faltered slightly. "And who's the lucky guy? Another waiter? Dishwasher, perhaps?" Adriana checked her watch, the simple, elegant timepiece that was the first gift Dominic had given her. "He should be arriving shortly, actually. To pick me up after my shift." "Well then," Alessandro said, raising his glass, "we'll be sure to introduce ourselves." "I'm sure he'd be interested to meet you," Adriana replied, her voice neutral but her eyes holding a warning that Alessandro was too self-absorbed to recognize. As she moved away, one of Alessandro's companions, the one with the gold signet ring, leaned forward. "Maybe we should ease up, Alessandro. We don't know who her fiancé might be." Alessandro scoffed. "What, you think she's engaged to someone important? Look at her. Eastern European accent, working as a waitress. She's probably marrying some mechanic or construction worker for a visa." Still, another friend cautioned, "We're here to celebrate your promotion, not harass the staff." "Oh, lighten up," Alessandro dismissed, downing half his whiskey in one swallow. "It's just a bit of fun. She should be flattered by the attention." As Adriana moved between tables, collecting empty glasses and taking orders, she felt a familiar prickle at the back of her neck. Glancing toward the entrance, she saw Marco speaking urgently with the hostess, both of them looking uncharacteristically nervous. The front doors opened, and the subtle shift in the room's atmosphere was immediate. Conversations quieted. Staff straightened. Even the music seemed to recede as 3 men entered the Crimson Room. 2 were clearly security, broad-shouldered, vigilant, their expensive suits cut to conceal shoulder holsters. But it was the man between them who commanded attention without effort. Tall and lean, with olive skin and dark hair threaded with silver at the temples, Dominic Leone moved with the fluid grace of a predator who had never needed to rush. His features were aristocratic, his eyes the color of aged whiskey, and his bespoke charcoal suit spoke of old money and refined taste. Those who recognized him, and many did, quickly averted their gaze. Those who didn't still instinctively sensed the power he carried, the absolute authority that required no validation. Dominic Leone had not been born to wealth or influence. His grandfather had arrived in Milan from Sicily with nothing but determination and a willingness to do whatever necessary to survive. Starting as a dockworker at the port, he had gradually built connections, identified opportunities, and carved out territory in the import business, sometimes through legitimate means, sometimes through methods that existed in the shadows between legality and crime. By the time Dominic's father took over the family enterprises in the 1980s, the Leone name was already whispered with respect and fear in certain circles. Under his leadership, the business expanded, diversified, and developed a veneer of legitimacy that allowed them to move in Milan's highest social circles while maintaining their grip on the underworld. Dominic, educated at Europe's finest schools and groomed from childhood to assume control, had transformed the Leone Empire further. At 38, he controlled a network of legitimate businesses, shipping companies, import-export firms, real estate holdings, and high-end restaurants, while maintaining the more lucrative shadow operations that had built the family fortune. What made Dominic truly dangerous wasn't just his wealth or connections, but his intelligence and patience. Unlike his more volatile predecessors, he rarely resorted to violence or threats. He didn't need to. His reputation alone was usually sufficient to ensure cooperation, and when it wasn't, he had more subtle methods of persuasion. The most dangerous predator, he often told his associates, is the one that doesn't need to bare its teeth. Now, as he entered the Crimson Room, that predatory nature was carefully concealed behind impeccable manners and refined taste. But it was there, visible to those who knew how to look, in the alertness of his gaze, the controlled precision of his movements, the way others instinctively made space for him. Dominic's eyes scanned the room once, efficiently, before finding Adriana. The transformation in his expression was subtle but profound, the hardness softening just enough to reveal the man beneath the legend. He started toward her, his security remaining discreetly by the entrance. At table 12, Alessandro was mid-anecdote when he noticed the change in atmosphere. He turned, following the gazes of his suddenly silent companions, and frowned at the approaching figure. "Who the hell is that?" he muttered. "Looks like he thinks he owns the place." One of his friends, paler than before, leaned forward urgently. "That's Dominic Leone." Alessandro's expression remained blank. "Leone," his friend hissed. "The Leone family." "Jesus, Alessandro, don't you read the business papers? They control half the import business through the port, and God knows what else." Recognition finally dawned on Alessandro's face, followed by a dismissive shrug. "So he's connected. This is Milan, everyone's connected." "Not like him," another friend murmured, but Alessandro was no longer listening. Dominic had reached Adriana, standing close enough that their conversation remained private. His hand brushed her arm, eyes narrowing slightly as he noticed the lingering scent of alcohol on her hair. "You're wet," he said quietly, his deep voice carrying just a hint of his Sicilian roots. "A small accident," Adriana replied, her eyes meeting his directly, the only person in the room who could do so without fear. "Nothing important." Dominic studied her face, reading the truth she wasn't saying. His expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Who?" Adriana hesitated, then made a small gesture toward table 12. "The one with the blue eyes." "But Dominic, it's not worth." "Everything about you is worth it," he interrupted gently, touching her cheek with a tenderness that would have shocked those who knew him only by reputation. Then, more formally, "Finish your shift properly." "I'll wait." She nodded, knowing better than to argue. As she moved away to attend to her remaining tables, Dominic approached the bar, where Sophia hurried to serve him his usual, a single malt, neat. He took a seat that offered a clear view of both Adriana and table 12, his posture relaxed but his attention unwavering. If you believe true power is shown in restraint, not violence, subscribe to Lucy Love Stories for more tales of unexpected strength and dignity in the face of cruelty. Their love story had begun in this very room 18 months earlier. Dominic had come to the Crimson Room for a business meeting, seated at a corner table with associates discussing shipping routes and import licenses. Adriana had been their server, quiet and efficient, drawing no attention to herself yet somehow capturing Dominic's interest completely. It wasn't her beauty, though she possessed a natural elegance that needed no enhancement. It was her dignity, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence despite the occasional condescension from wealthy patrons. The way she spoke, precise and thoughtful, revealing an intelligence that seemed at odds with her surroundings. When his associates had departed, Dominic had asked her to sit for a moment. Not a proposition, not a power play, but a simple request for conversation. Against her better judgment, she had accepted. You're not from Milan, he had observed, his tone making it a statement rather than a question. Romania, she'd replied, her posture straight, her gaze direct. Bucharest originally, though my family moved to a smaller town when I was young. And now you're here, serving drinks to men who don't deserve them. There had been no mockery in his voice, only a genuine curiosity. Why? Most women would have given him the answer they thought he wanted to hear. Adriana had given him the truth. Because education is expensive, and waiting tables pays better than retail or office work for someone with my background. She had gestured to the elegant surroundings. The Crimson Room attracts wealthy patrons who tip well when they're trying to impress each other. That money helps me finish my degree and send something home to my parents. What are you studying? International business with a focus on emerging markets. Specifically, development opportunities in Eastern Europe. He had smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed his severe features. Not what I expected. People rarely expect waitresses to have ambitions beyond serving drinks, she had replied, a hint of challenge in her voice. Instead of being offended, Dominic had laughed, a sound that had caused heads to turn throughout the restaurant, so rare was its occurrence. I deserved that, he had acknowledged. May I ask your name? Adriana Vega. Dominic Leone. He had extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she had taken it. It's a pleasure to meet someone who sees beyond appearances, Ms. Vega. That first conversation had lasted nearly an hour, ranging from economic theory to Romanian literature to the challenges of navigating Milan as an outsider. By the end, Adriana had been both intrigued and wary. She knew enough about the Leone family to understand that Dominic operated in a world very different from her own, a world of power plays and dangerous connections, where problems were sometimes solved permanently. He had asked if he might see her again. She had hesitated, then answered with the honesty that would become the foundation of their relationship. I know who you are, Mr. Leone. I know what people say about your family, your business. I'm not sure that's a world I want to enter. Instead of being offended, he had respected her caution. Then let me enter your world instead, he had suggested. Just conversation. Nothing more unless you wish it. Their courtship had progressed slowly, deliberately. Dominic attending her university lectures as an observer. Adriana introducing him to the immigrant community where she volunteered teaching literacy. Both of them discovering in each other an unexpected kinship, two outsiders who had fought their way into prosperity without losing their essential selves. For Dominic, whose world was filled with people who either feared him or wanted something from him, Adriana's straightforward honesty was like water in a desert. She challenged him, questioned him, forced him to examine aspects of his life and business that he had long accepted without thought. For Adriana, Dominic offered not just security or wealth, but understanding. Unlike her classmates who had never known struggle, or the wealthy patrons who saw her as invisible, Dominic recognized the strength it took to build a life from nothing. He valued her mind, her perspective, her unwavering sense of self. When he had finally asked her to marry him, kneeling in the small community garden where she taught children to grow vegetables, Adriana had one condition: I need to finish where I started. My degree, my work. I won't be just an accessory to your life. I would never ask that of you, Dominic had promised. Your strength, your independence, these are what I love. I don't want to change you. I want to stand beside you. Now, watching Alessandro's table from the bar, Dominic reflected on that promise. Adriana had transformed him in ways he hadn't anticipated, teaching him that true power lay not in fear or control, but in the choice to use one's influence for protection rather than destruction. Tonight, he would honor her influence by showing restraint. But he would also ensure that the man who had dared to humiliate his future wife would understand exactly what line he had crossed, and what mercy looked like when extended from a position of absolute power. At table 12, Alessandro's earlier bravado was beginning to crack. The continued presence of Dominic Leone at the bar, his occasional glances in their direction, had created an atmosphere of growing tension. "He keeps looking over here," muttered the friend with the signet ring. "Maybe we should just pay and leave." "Why?" Alessandro demanded, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "We haven't done anything wrong." "You poured whiskey on his fiancée," another friend pointed out, keeping his voice low. "That's not nothing." "I didn't know she was his fiancée," Alessandro hissed back. "How was I supposed to know some waitress is engaged to Dominic Leone?" "Maybe that's the point," said the quietest member of their group, speaking up for the first time. "Maybe we shouldn't pour drinks on anyone, regardless of who they're engaged to." Alessandro shot him a withering look. "Since when are you so concerned about the feelings of service staff, Paolo? Last month you reduced that hotel concierge to tears because your room wasn't ready." Paolo had the grace to look embarrassed. "That was different." "Was it?" Alessandro challenged, though his eyes kept darting toward the bar where Dominic sat, still watching them with that unnerving calm. "Or is it just different because her fiancé can have us all disappeared with a phone call?" The table fell silent at that, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. They were 5 financial professionals who moved money, made deals, and occasionally bent rules. Dominic Leone was a man who controlled not just wealth but power, the kind of power that operated outside legal boundaries when necessary. "What do we do?" the signet ring wearer finally asked, his earlier arrogance entirely evaporated. Alessandro drained his whiskey, using the burn of alcohol to steady his nerves. "Nothing. We finish our drinks, pay our bill, and leave. Like normal people who haven't done anything wrong. And if he approaches us? Then I'll apologize for the misunderstanding," Alessandro said, with more confidence than he felt. "It was an accident, after all. Drinks get spilled in bars all the time." His friends exchanged skeptical glances but said nothing. They all knew it hadn't been an accident. They all knew Alessandro had deliberately humiliated Adriana because he could, because he saw her as beneath him, because watching her try to maintain her composure had amused him. And now they all wondered if that momentary amusement would cost them far more than they were prepared to pay. Across the room, Adriana continued her shift, moving between tables with the same quiet efficiency she always displayed. If she was aware of the tension building between her fiancé and the men who had humiliated her, she gave no sign of it. She took orders, delivered drinks, processed payments, all with the dignity that had first caught Dominic's attention. Only those who knew her well might have noticed the slight stiffness in her movements, the careful way she avoided looking toward either table 12 or the bar where Dominic sat. This wasn't her first experience with disrespect or harassment. Working in upscale establishments had taught her that wealth often came with entitlement, that some men viewed service staff as less than human, fair game for their amusement or desires. What made tonight different wasn't the incident itself, but Dominic's presence. In the 18 months they had been together, he had never witnessed the side of her work life. She had told him about it, of course, the occasional inappropriate comment, the dismissive treatment, the customers who saw her uniform before they saw her person. But telling was different from seeing, and Adriana knew that Dominic's protective instincts ran deep. As she passed near the bar, he caught her eye, a silent question in his gaze. She gave a small shake of her head, "Not yet, not now," and he nodded almost imperceptibly in response. This understanding between them, this ability to communicate without words, had been one of the unexpected gifts of their relationship. Dominic respected her enough to let her handle the situation her way, for now. But they both knew there would be consequences for Alessandro and his friends. The only question was what form those consequences would take. As her shift neared its end, Adriana approached table 12 one final time. "Will there be anything else, gentlemen?" she asked, her professional mask firmly in place. Alessandro, who had been watching Dominic from the corner of his eye, turned to her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just the check, thank you." She nodded and moved away, returning moments later with their bill. As she placed it on the table, Alessandro reached for his wallet, extracting several large bills. "Keep the change," he said, his tone suggesting this generosity somehow erased his earlier behavior. "No hard feelings about earlier, right? Just a bit of fun." Adriana looked at him directly, her gaze steady. "Of course, sir. Just fun." Something in her calm assessment made Alessandro shift uncomfortably. "Your fiancé seems intense," he commented, trying to regain his footing. "Known him long?" "Long enough to understand him," Adriana replied. "And for him to understand me." "Well, congratulations on the engagement," Alessandro said, his forced joviality fooling no one. "When's the wedding?" 3 weeks from Saturday." Adriana collected the bills, tucking them into her apron pocket. "Thank you for your patronage. Enjoy the rest of your evening." As she walked away, Alessandro turned to his friends. "See? All fine. No problem." "You're delusional," muttered Paolo, already standing. "Let's get out of here before your bit of fun gets us all in serious trouble." The 5 men rose, gathering their belongings with the haste of those who sense danger but are trying not to show fear. As they made their way toward the exit, Adriana disappeared into the back room to change out of her uniform, her shift finally complete. Dominic remained at the bar, sipping his whiskey with unhurried calm. He made no move to intercept Alessandro and his friends, his stillness somehow more unnerving than any overt action would have been. Just as the group reached the door, Adriana emerged from the back, now dressed in a simple but elegant black dress, her hair freed from its work-mandated bun. The transformation was subtle but striking, from waitress to the kind of woman who belonged on the arm of one of Milan's most powerful men. Alessandro froze, his hand on the door, as their eyes met across the room. In that moment, something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, that appearances could be deceiving, that the woman he had dismissed as nothing more than a servant was something else entirely. Then Dominic rose from his seat at the bar, and whatever courage Alessandro had mustered evaporated instantly. He pushed through the door, his friends following close behind, their earlier camaraderie replaced by a tense silence. Dominic crossed to Adriana, taking her hand with a gentleness that belied the cold fury still evident in his eyes. "Are you ready to go?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she replied, then hesitated. "Dominic, I don't want." "I know what you don't want," he assured her, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Trust me." She studied his face for a moment, then nodded. "I do." As they moved toward the exit, Marco approached, his expression concerned. "Adriana, about what happened earlier, I should have intervened immediately." "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," she assured him. "Some people can't be taught manners by normal means." Marco's eyes flickered to Dominic, then back to Adriana. "Will we see you for your shift tomorrow?" "Of course," she said with a small smile. "I've never missed a shift, have I?" Outside, the mild spring evening wrapped around them, the sounds of Milan's nightlife creating a backdrop to their conversation. Dominic's security detail materialized from the shadows, maintaining a discreet distance as the couple walked toward the waiting car. "You're angry," Adriana observed, her fingers laced through his. "Yes," Dominic admitted, no pretense between them. Not just at what they did, but at the fact that this probably isn't the first time something like this has happened. "It isn't," she confirmed. "Though usually it's more subtle, condescending comments, inappropriate propositions, the occasional accidental touch. Most customers know better than to be so blatant." Dominic's jaw tightened. "And you never told me." Because it's part of the job, Adriana said simply. Every woman in service deals with it. Every immigrant. Every person seen as somehow less than by people with money and entitlement. That doesn't make it acceptable. No, she agreed. But it makes it ordinary. Not worth disrupting your day over. They reached the car, a sleek black Mercedes with tinted windows. The driver opened the door for them, and as they settled into the leather interior, Dominic turned to face her fully. Nothing that hurts you is ordinary to me, he said, his voice low and intense. Nothing that diminishes you is unworthy of my attention. Adriana touched his face gently. I know. It's one of the reasons I love you. But Dominic, I don't need you to fight my battles. I've been handling men like Alessandro Visconti my entire life. Visconti? Dominic's expression sharpened. You know his name? He mentioned it several times, loudly, Adriana said with a slight smile. He seems very impressed with himself and his position at Bianchi Financial. Bianchi, Dominic repeated, a calculating look entering his eyes. Carlo Bianchi's firm. You know him? Carlo? Yes. He's an old associate of my father's. His daughter was in that literacy program you ran last year. Adriana nodded, remembering the shy girl with the expensive clothes who had worked so hard to help newer immigrants learn Italian. Lucia. She was one of my best volunteers. Carlo thinks very highly of you, Dominic said, his tone casual but his eyes intent. He mentioned at our last meeting that he wished more of his employees shared your work ethic and integrity. Dominic, Adriana said, recognizing the direction of his thoughts. Whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything violent, he assured her, taking her hand again. Or illegal. Or even particularly vindictive. Just educational. Educational, she repeated skeptically. A lesson in consequences, Dominic clarified. In the value of respect. In the danger of making assumptions based on someone's job or background. Adriana studied him, weighing his words against what she knew of his character. In their time together, she had come to understand that Dominic's reputation for ruthlessness was both earned and exaggerated. He could be merciless when crossed, but he was never cruel for cruelty's sake. His actions, even the harshest ones, were calculated, proportional, designed to achieve specific outcomes rather than simply inflict pain. No physical harm, she said finally, making it a condition rather than a question. None, he promised. And nothing that would affect innocent people, his family, colleagues who weren't involved. The consequences will be precisely targeted, Dominic assured her. And ultimately, they may prove beneficial to everyone involved, including Alessandro himself. Adriana raised an eyebrow. How does ruining him benefit him? Who said anything about ruining him? Dominic's smile held a predatory edge. Sometimes the most valuable lessons are those that allow us to rebuild ourselves, better than before. The car moved smoothly through Milan's evening traffic, passing from the financial district into the more exclusive residential areas where old money and new power coexisted in uneasy alliance. As they approached the Leone estate, a renovated 19th-century villa surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens, Adriana leaned against Dominic's shoulder, the tension of the evening finally catching up with her. I just want to forget about it, she murmured. To focus on our wedding, my final exams, the future we're building. And you will, Dominic promised, pressing a kiss to her temple. Leave Alessandro Visconti to me. By this time tomorrow, he'll be nothing more than an unpleasant memory. Comment below with a time when you witnessed someone underestimating another person and facing consequences. We've all seen it happen, the moment when someone realizes they've misjudged completely, when the person they dismissed reveals unexpected power or strength. The next morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through the windows of the bedroom Adriana and Dominic shared whenever she stayed at the villa. She woke to find his side of the bed empty, the sheets cool to the touch. Not unusual, Dominic often rose early to handle business matters before she awoke. Wrapping herself in a silk robe, another gift she had initially resisted as too extravagant, Adriana made her way downstairs, following the scent of fresh coffee to the sunlit kitchen. There she found Dominic seated at the marble island, phone to his ear, his expression one of focused attention. "Yes, Carlo, I understand completely," he was saying, his voice pleasant but firm. "Your reputation is built on the character of your employees. Of course, discretion is paramount. No, I wouldn't expect you to act without verification." Adriana poured herself coffee from the carafe, raising an eyebrow in silent question. Dominic winked at her, continuing his conversation. "The security footage should be in your email now." "Yes, that's him with the blue eyes, Alessandro Visconti. The woman he's pouring his drink on is my fiancée, Adriana." "Yes, the same Adriana who worked with Lucia last year." There was a long pause as Dominic listened, his expression revealing nothing. "I appreciate your concern, Carlo, but I'm not asking you to terminate him." "No, nothing so dramatic. Perhaps a reassignment? Something that would allow him to develop a better understanding of service, of respect." "The Rotterdam office?" "That could work very well." Another pause, then a genuine smile. "Thank you, Carlo. I knew you'd see the educational potential here. Yes, we'd be delighted to have you and Elisa at the wedding. Give my best to Lucia." As he ended the call, Adriana set her coffee down with deliberate care. "Rotterdam? Bianchi Financial's newest branch office," Dominic explained, his tone conversational. "Currently understaffed, serving primarily dock workers and small import businesses. Very different clientele from the Milan headquarters where Alessandro has been cultivating his wealthy clients and luxury lifestyle. And Carlo Bianchi is sending him there because Carlo believes in second chances, in redemption through honest work and humility." Dominic's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "And because he remembers how you spent every Saturday for 6 months teaching his daughter and other children to read and write proper Italian, asking nothing in return." Adriana absorbed this, trying to imagine Alessandro Visconti, with his designer suits and contempt for those he considered beneath him, working in a small branch office serving working-class clients. "He'll quit rather than accept the transfer." "Perhaps," Dominic acknowledged. "In which case, he'll find himself unexpectedly unemployable at any major financial institution in Milan." Carlo Bianchi's influence is considerable, and his opinion of Alessandro's character has been severely damaged. And if he accepts the transfer? Then he'll learn what it means to serve others rather than exploit them. He'll discover that the people he's dismissed as beneath his notice are individuals with dignity, dreams, and their own forms of power. Dominic took her hand, his expression softening. "He'll learn what I learned from you, that true worth has nothing to do with position or wealth." Adriana considered this, finding a certain poetic justice in the arrangement. Alessandro wouldn't be destroyed or physically harmed. He would simply be placed in a position where his character would either evolve or condemn him to failure. "You're more subtle than people give you credit for," she observed, squeezing his hand. "I've had an excellent teacher in restraint," Dominic replied, bringing her fingers to his lips. "A woman who showed me that sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty is dignity, not vengeance." Later that day, as Adriana prepared for her afternoon class, her phone chimed with a message from Sophia at the Crimson Room. "You won't believe what just happened," it read. "Your friends from last night came back. The blue-eyed one asked for you, wanted to apologize. Marco told him you were off today. He looked terrified. Left a huge tip in an envelope for you. What did your man do to him?" Adriana smiled, typing her response, nothing violent. Just a lesson in perspective. When she arrived for her shift the following evening, Marco handed her the envelope Alessandro had left. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Ms. Vega, I offer my sincere apologies for my inexcusable behavior. There is no justification for how I treated you. I've recently been given an opportunity to reconsider my perspectives and priorities, and I hope to become someone who treats all people with the respect they deserve. I wish you and Mr. Leone every happiness in your upcoming marriage. Respectfully, Alessandro Visconti. Beneath the note was a substantial donation to the literacy program where Adriana volunteered, made in her name. What did Dominic do to him? Marco asked, watching her reaction to the note. I've never seen anyone so completely transformed overnight. Adriana tucked the note away, a small smile playing at her lips. He showed him that true power isn't about dominating others. It's about having the strength to lift them up instead of tearing them down. 3 weeks later, Adriana stood in the garden of the Leone villa, surrounded by flowers and family, as she prepared to become Dominic's wife. Her parents had flown in from Romania, initially overwhelmed by the grandeur of their daughter's new life but gradually relaxing as they recognized the genuine love between Adriana and Dominic. As she waited for the ceremony to begin, a familiar face approached, Carlo Bianchi, accompanied by his daughter Lucia, now a poised teenager who immediately embraced Adriana with genuine affection. My father told me what happened, Lucia said quietly. About the man at the restaurant, and what he did to you. That's in the past now, Adriana assured her, smoothing the girl's hair. Father also says the man is doing well in Rotterdam, Lucia continued, her expression thoughtful. That he's changed. That he's learning to see people differently. I'm glad to hear that, Adriana said, and found that she meant it. Revenge might have been satisfying momentarily, but transformation, real, lasting change, was infinitely more valuable. As the music began and Adriana prepared to walk toward Dominic, who waited for her beneath an arch of white roses, she reflected on the journey that had brought them together. From different worlds, different backgrounds, different experiences of power and its uses, yet united by a shared understanding that true strength lay not in domination but in elevation. In the end, Alessandro Visconti had given them an unexpected wedding gift, a reminder of the values that formed the foundation of their relationship. Respect. Dignity. The courage to stand firm in one's worth, regardless of how others might try to diminish it. And as Adriana took her first steps toward her future husband, she carried those values with her, not just as principles to live by, but as lessons to share with others. Lessons about seeing beyond appearances, about recognizing worth in unexpected places, about using power not to crush but to transform. Lessons that, perhaps, even Alessandro Visconti was finally beginning to learn. Share this video with someone who appreciates stories about dignity and respect. And don't forget to subscribe to Lucy Love Stories for a new story every week that will touch your heart and remind you of the power of love, respect, and unexpected strength in the face of adversity.